Welcome to this episode of the Aquarist's Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Aquarist's Edge. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to take a moment to thank you for your loyal listenership. There are many of you who are tuning in weekly. I can see that from the stats, and I'm very grateful for that. If you're here for the first time, thank you for listening and taking a moment to either listen to us via YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. If you're listening on YouTube, can I ask that you subscribe to the channel and perhaps leave a comment? That goes a long way to assist the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please review the podcast, follow it, and feel free to leave a comment. This is a wonderful community of people who are just committed to ensuring that we can create the best quality ecosystems in our tanks. Every week we tackle an episode that is helpful to a new aquarist and topics that are helpful to those who've been in the hobby for a while. So today we're going to talk about the often misunderstood topic of Betta Sorority tanks. We're going to talk about housing multiple female bettas together, what works, what definitely doesn't work, and how to do it right if you're going to do it at all. So we're going to talk about what a Betta sorority actually is, the common misconceptions around these tanks, the ideal tank setup, some do's and don'ts, and much more. So if you've ever wondered whether your dream of a colourful, harmonious group of female bettas is realistic or a recipe for disaster, buckle up, because today we're going to unpack everything you need to know. And if you've tried a Betta sorority before, or if you're planning one, share your experience in the comments or leave us a review. It's always great for us to learn from others. So let's get into it. Let's start with the very basics. What is in fact a Betta sorority tank? Well, this is a tank where multiple female bettas are kept together. Now, unlike their male counterparts who are famously aggressive towards each other, females can sometimes coexist in groups under very specific conditions. But, and a big but here, just because it's possible doesn't mean it's simple. Female bettas still retain a degree of territoriality. They may not build bubble nests or fight to the death the way males often do, but aggression is still a very real and present issue. So where does this idea of a sorority come from? Well, originally this was popularized by some Asian breeders and hobbyists who kept groups of young, closely related females in large, heavily planted grow-out tanks. In that context where the fish were raised together in ideal conditions, it worked. But when hobbyists started recreating the setup at home, especially in undersized tanks or with unrelated fish, things often went sideways. From a scientific point of view, Bettas is a labyrinth fish, meaning it possesses a labyrinth organ, which is a modified gill structure that allows it to breathe atmospheric oxygen. And this adaptation evolved due to the species' natural habitat in low oxygen, shallow waters such as rice paddies and irrigation ditches. Understanding this physiological trait is crucial, as it means bettas will often occupy the mid to upper levels of the tank, leading to more direct interaction and competition in shared spaces. To really understand why Betta sororities are tricky, you need to understand the psychology of the female betta. Female bettas are often described as less aggressive than males, but that's not quite right. We would probably say that they're differently aggressive. They still have a social hierarchy or a pecking order, and they will fight to establish it. Once that pecking order is set, things may calm down. But if new fish are added or the balance is disrupted, you can see a resurgence of aggression. According to Dr. David Poole, the author of You and Your Aquarium, bettas were originally wild caught in rice paddies and slow-moving waters in Thailand and Cambodia, where territory mattered. Even females in the wild stake out hiding spots and safe zones. And this behavior is also supported by a study published in the Journal of Fish Biology in 2007, which showed that female bettas exhibit context-specific aggression, particularly in environments lacking sufficient shelter or visual breaks. And the study noted a strong correlation between space complexity and reduced stress indicators such as elevated cortisol levels. So when you cram multiple females into a tank with nowhere to hide, you're essentially throwing them into a psychological pressure cooker. I like to compare it to being locked in a studio apartment with 4 colleagues you don't really like. There's no privacy, someone always wants to dominate the remote, and sooner or later, someone's flipping a chair. The key to success? Prevent the chair flipping. We'll talk about how to do that now. So let's then look at the essential do's. These are the absolute requirements if you want to have a chance at running a successful Betta sorority. The first one is really quite simple. Use a large tank. Now, this is non-negotiable. I recommend at least 75 litres, but ideally over 100 litres. The reason for this is because space reduces aggression. The more room each betta has, the less likely they are to constantly cross paths and trigger territorial behaviour. Interestingly, aquatic ecologists have long observed the principle of territorial dilution in social fish species. The more space available, the more territory is perceived to be available, reducing stress-induced hormone release, such as cortisol, and thus reducing aggression. You want to start with at least 5 to 7 females, not 2 or 3. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, but smaller groups lead to more bullying. With only 2 or 3, the dominant betta can easily target the weaker one. In larger groups, the aggression becomes diffused. You also want to make sure that you introduce the female bettas all at the same time. This is really important. Introducing new bettas later, especially after a hierarchy has formed, is risky. You want to prevent one fish from claiming the entire tank before the others arrive. You want to make sure that you are planting your tank heavily and using line-of-sight breaks. Live plants, driftwood, rocks and so on, anything to break up sight lines. And the goal here is to allow the fish to escape each other's vision and find refuge. Hornwort, Java fern, Anubias, Thalassneria are excellent choices. Aquascaping to reduce aggression is supported by lab-based studies in behavioral ecology. One such study found that territorial aggression in cichlids, another hierarchical species, decreased dramatically when hardscape broke up visual dominance zones. You also want to make sure that you're monitoring your fish closely for the first few weeks. You'll need to observe them daily. Watch for fin damage, excessive hiding, or any fish that's not eating. Those would be early warnings for you. So now that we've heard about the do's, what about the don'ts? These are the things that can absolutely wreck a Betta Sorority tank. So let's get into those. Don't put females in anything under 75 litres. It's one of the biggest mistakes new hobbyists make. The 20 litre tank is not big enough. It simply doesn't allow the necessary space or stability. Don't mix males into a sorority tank. Yep, people try this, and it doesn't end well. The presence of a male can amplify aggression among the females and cause absolute chaos. Don't add new fish after the hierarchy is stable. This almost always triggers a fight for dominance. Once your sorority is working, let it be. Don't leave the tank underdecorated. Open swimming space might look pretty, but for bettas, it's stressful. They need a clustered environment with lots of hiding spaces and lots of places to swim in between to feel safe. Don't ignore those subtle signs of bullying. Missing scales, hiding in corners, or clamped fins are all red flags. And if you're seeing these, it's time to intervene. And sometimes this simply means rehoming a problem fish. And lastly, don't treat each betta the same. Just like people, they have personalities. Some are chilled, others are tiny aquatic tyrants. So know your fish. Now, how do you know if your sorority is actually working? Here are a few key signs. There's even food distribution. During feeding time, all bettas are able to eat without any of them being chased away. If one fish dominates the food and others avoid that area, that's a red flag. You want to watch how the fish are moving around the tank. Are they exploring different zones? Or is one female holding court over half the tank while others huddle in corners? Healthy sororities show rotation and flow. I spoke earlier about checking for things like fin nipping. Know that occasional nips might happen in the early days, but persistent fin shredding isn't normal. That's not dominance, it's bullying. You also want to check that there's healthy interaction between the fish. There might be some flaring and displaying and even nudging. That may happen from time to time, but they're not going to chase or harass each other non-stop. You're usually going to have one dominant female and one submissive and the rest somewhere in between. That's okay as long as it's stable and no particular fish is being continually targeted. That's something known by animal behaviorists as linear dominance hierarchy and has been observed in many captive species. The key is that the hierarchy should remain static, not fluid or constantly shifting, because instability causes stress, and stress compromises immune function. Now, in terms of long-term care of a sorority tank, just like with any other aquarium, maintenance is just as important as the setup. Weekly water changes of at least 30%, regular testing of ammonia, nitrite and nitrate levels, and consistent feeding go a long way. Use varied diets, high-quality pellets, frozen bloodworms, daphnia, and the occasional live treat to keep them active and reduce boredom-induced aggression. It's also an idea to keep your light dim or diffused, because harsh lighting tends to increase stress. Fish physiologists have shown that extended exposure to bright light increases cortisol levels in bettas. So if you're seeing an uptick in flare displays or pacing behavior, consider adjusting the period that your lights are on. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, it just doesn't work, and that's okay. If the aggression never settles or if the fish are constantly becoming injured, you may need to rehome some or break up the sorority entirely. It's really important to know that is not a failure on your part as a fish keeper. What you want to be doing as a responsible aquarist is to prioritize the well-being of your fish over the aesthetics of your tank or your best intentions. And sororities are beautiful when they work, but if they don't, there's no shame in moving to separate tanks. So there you have it, a basic introduction to keeping Betta Sorority tanks. We covered quite a lot today in a short time, but I hope that the episode has given you the tools to make informed choices, because these beautiful little fish deserve setups that support their well-being. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review, leave a comment and so on, all the things I spoke of at the beginning of the episode. Next week we'll tackle another topic of interest to home aquarists, and so until we meet next time, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarius Edge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarius Edge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.